Ladies and gentlemen, One Piece chapter 1114 is out. This chapter may have pushed Egghead over the edge for me in terms of my favorite arc. We just gotta talk about it. Let's jump right into it. So, before we talk about any of the specific contents of this chapter, I want to talk about the kind of layout and structure. I think this is something that One Piece does amazing, and Oda is just masterful at it. The fact that we're getting, like, these jump cuts to different reactions on different islands of Vegapunk's announcement, and then jumping back to Egghead and still seeing those reactions to the announcement, all while seeing fighting at the same time. Just the fact that all this stuff is happening while we're getting Vegapunk's dialogue, it makes me feel like this like doomsday clock is ticking, right? It makes me feel like the tension is building and rising and we're on the clock. And I just love that feeling when I'm reading the chapter and I'm jumping between what Vegapunk is saying and people's live reactions to that, and then what Vegapunk is saying again, and then people fighting on Egghead. I know it's a lot to handle for some people, but for me, I just love that feeling of calamity, and I think no other series does that better than One Piece, especially in this chapter. This is a great example of it. It just really makes me feel like it's a big event, right? There's like a dramatic build up here, and what's happening has a huge impact on the story, and that is directly related to how the dialogue and the chapter is structured. So before we get into any of the information, I just wanted to mention that because I think this chapter is the best example of that we've had in like 100 chapters maybe. It was fantastic. Now getting into the actual content of the chapter, we got to see so many different reactions across the world to this Vegapunk message. I think 3 of them are actually very important, and I'm going to jump into that in a second. I do just want to mention, though, that I love the fact that Water 7 is included here because last chapter, when this information was revealed to us, a lot of people were bringing up how the water levels are rising in Water 7, so I thought it was really cool to see Pole's reaction and Iceberg's reaction to that. But the 3 reactions that I think are very important to the story, well, they're all important to the story, but the 3 reactions that I think will be callbacks in the future, we're going to call back to these moments, and you know it's going to be large character changes for these 3 characters, is Akainu, Kuzan, and Doflamingo. I'm going to start with Akainu and Kuzan here because I think they have a very similar reaction. I have the panels right here in front of me, and they literally have the exact same dialogue and kind of facial expression, where it's just the ellipses, and they're both kind of like shaded amongst the eyes. I do think that this is a turning point for both of these characters, where, or maybe not Kuzan because he's already had this turning point, but both of them are realizing that for Akainu, crap, I work for this organization that is about to sink the world, and Kuzan, I used to work for this organization that's about to throw the world into the ocean, right? And I think the fact that they both have the same facial expression kind of makes me reconnect those characters. We know Kuzan and Akainu have a connection, but the fact that they're both kind of realizing this is not good for us is a testament to how connected they are. I also think this could be a huge turning point for Akainu. I can't really tell if his reaction is because, crap, the world's going to go against my organization now, or he himself is realizing, I don't want to work for the world government anymore. Either way, I think this could be a huge turning point for him. Maybe he kind of realizes, I'm not working for the Gorosei anymore. You know, I have a super strong strength. We all know Akainu has an extremely strong sense of justice, so he's not going to turn against the military. But what he is potentially going to do now is maybe branch off, right? We know the Navy works for the world government. This facial reaction and this kind of just reaction from Akainu makes me feel like we could potentially see Akainu kind of do his own thing now. I know his arc isn't here yet, but I think when it comes, we can definitely get a call back to this moment, and this could be the breaking point where Akainu decides, I'm the head of the show now. I'm separating the Navy from the world government. I'm doing things my own way, right? Because it definitely does not feel like he's very happy with this announcement, at least in this panel. And next is Doflamingo. When we get to see Doflamingo, you know shit is going down. I could not tell based off his reaction if he had already known this information or not, but regardless, I just think the fact that we get to see him again makes me hopeful that he comes back into the story somehow. I know that might be copium, but regardless, I think his line of dialogue saying maybe we could go somewhere higher, referring to maybe saving the prison from the incoming doom of the rising water levels, he's definitely talking about Marijua here, or just, you know, he wants to get back into his position as a Celestial Dragon. I love this inclusion of the dialogue from Oda. Again, makes me feel like he could potentially come back into the story, but I just love how every time he appears on screen, or on panel in this case, he just has this sense of understanding in the world, right? He just knows so much about what's going on. Even though he's a villain, he has this broader outside perspective on everything. He understands that Celestial Dragons are evil despite being one himself, and he understands that the world is kind of falling apart around him while he's sitting in prison, and he's unbothered by it. I just love Doflamingo as a character. I really hope he comes back into the story, and this made me feel like he is. So we might look back on this moment and realize this was foreshadowing Doflamingo coming back into the story because the water level rising has something to do with him escaping impelled down or something like that. Now, very quickly before we move on, I want to talk about how important it was that Vegapunk included this part about the sea quakes that had already happened, because what's happening right now in the story serves as a way to tell the world about the world government and their evil, right? In the end of the story, the world needs to know that Luffy is the good guy, right? When he eventually liberates and creates the Dawn, we need to know, or the One Piece citizens need to know that the world government is evil, right? Because then there's no really cathartic feeling of triumph if the world kind of still thinks Luffy is a pirate. So Vegapunk just telling the world that the world is going to sink is not really proof in and of itself. And I think if the whole world kind of switched sides just off of that alone, doesn't really fit well into the story. I don't think it's great writing. So the fact that he's like proving his statement here with a prediction, obviously this was recorded in the past and the prediction has already come true, to validate what he's saying is extremely important. I know a lot of people, I saw some people complaining that Oda would even include these panels, right? It's just like not important. It's wasting panel time. I could not disagree more. I think it is extremely important for the world to know that what Vegapunk's saying is true, because the implications need to come true. The world needs to know that the world government is evil for the story to move on in the direction Oda wants it to go. Now let's talk about this masterclass of a panel with the Mother Flame. I did not know Oda was so good at drawing machinery, man. Like, this thing looks menacing. I just love, the whole I flew too close to the sun thing. Vegapunk talking about his sins. Despite, having good intentions, he makes mistakes. He works for the world government, and he talks about his sins with researching the past later on in this chapter. Vegapunk has just turned into this masterclass of a character for me. I absolutely love him. But what is more interesting for me is the Mother Flame itself. Maybe this is a reach, but the fact that Saturn is kind of like deflecting whatever is reflecting off of the Mother Flame, and then instantly the next panel he transforms back into his like human form. Potentially the Mother Flame has something to do with the weaknesses of the Gorosei, whether it's like heat or light or whatever is even in the Mother Flame. Just the fact that like we see him recoil from like entering this room and then turn into human form immediately, there's something here. I also think it's pretty on par for Oda to introduce the Gorosei as invincible, but then also give us a hint as to what their weakness is this arc. It all kind of makes sense. Regardless, the Mother Flame itself being introduced in such a grand way really makes me feel like, I mean, if the world sinking information didn't, hammer it down enough, the fact that this Mother Flame is introduced here makes me feel like Emu and the sinking of these islands and the raising of the water levels is just a huge part of the end of the story. The fact that it's getting this grand introduction, and also the fact that the Gorosei are trying so hard to keep this thing alive despite destroying the rest of the island. This is going to have a huge impact on the rest of the story, and that's why I love this introduction. It just makes perfect sense to put here. Oda, once again, weaving in Vegapunk's words with the introduction of the Mother Flame while Saturn is breaking into this room. Just this perfect interwoven dialogue with events. I could go on hours and hours about how this introduction is perfect. I just wanted to mention it because we're going to be seeing this thing a lot more. I guarantee it. Now, there's been a lot of glaze from me this chapter, so we're going to get into a little bit of the toxic power scaling talk for a moment. If you want to skip this part, I don't blame you. I am once again here to complain about Luffy attacking Warcury seemingly without using any type of haki or Advanced Conqueror's haki or Ryuo, anything that would seemingly internally damage the character who is not getting damaged at all is not being used here. I just don't get it. I just don't. Oda, I cannot tell if he's just not taking the time to draw the indicators and the attacks are being used, which is unfortunate because then we can't really power scale the characters correctly, or there's a hole in the writing and Luffy is not using his strong powers against a character who he has acknowledged cannot be damaged. There's some kind of loophole here. I think I've said this complaint the last like 4 chapter reviews, so if it continues to go on, I might just not even bring it up anymore. This might be the last straw for me to just turn my brain off anytime Luffy throws a punch at anyone and only pay attention to like the lore drops in the chapter, which were insane. It's just unfortunate, right? We have so many insane Luffy fights coming up. Potentially a Kainu, definitely Blackbeard, definitely Emu, right? If we're just dropping the indicators for the most powerful abilities in the series for characters on this level, like what was the whole point of introducing them in the first place? It's unfortunate, it really is. But I am not going to wrap on this panel too much because, like I said in the beginning of this video, how Vegapunk's dialogue is interwoven perfectly with the panels on page. I absolutely adore how Vegapunk is introducing what Joy Boy was, right? We're getting information on Joy Boy for the first time pretty much in the whole series, right? At least information that's this in depth, while Luffy is goofing around and throwing a punch, right? This perfect parallel of we're getting the information as we're also seeing the modern day Joy Boy, right? The fact that Oda chose to put Luffy in this panel where Vegapunk is saying stuff about Joy Boy, I love it. This is just perfection. What's even more perfect though is once again Oda is bringing in these simple terms of just like piracy and pirates and the ocean back into One Piece. I said this last chapter review how One Piece is a magical story, right? At its core, it's a story about pirates, but at points it doesn't really feel like that because of how wacky and zany it is. But recently, Oda's been bringing us full circle with just like very pirate-like terms back and pirate-like things back into the story, right? The water levels rising is a very like pirate-like thing. The fact that the ancient race is called the Buccaneers, very pirate-like thing. And finally, this chapter, the reveal that Joy Boy was the very first pirate. I mean, we've known Joy Boy as a key figure into the Void Century for a very long time, but the fact that he's the very first pirate, again, I love how we're just being simple with this and bringing back like the pirate feel to the pirate manga. I know it's weird to say, but I just love this full circle feeling. I just can't get enough of it. And also the fact that Joy Boy is the first pirate and Luffy is now the next coming of Joy Boy, and he is the ideal pirate because pirates represent freedom and Luffy represents freedom in its truest form. There's just so much I can go on about this. I'm sure I can make a whole video on it if I wanted to. It's just perfection. We expected it from Oda. The fact that Joy Boy was the first pirate and now Luffy is like going to be like the pirate, like the greatest pirate of all time, the Pirate King. There's just so many connections here. I can't even wrap my brain around it, right? The chapter's still fresh in my mind. I just love it all. I think it's fantastic. Now we are in a break week, so we do have a lot of time to speculate. Last chapter, I did say the water level rising information is going to be like the end of Vegapunk's announcement, and boy was I wrong. So I'm not going to make any claims this time. How about you guys let me know? Is this the end of Vegapunk's announcement? Are the Gorosei going to find wherever it's coming from? Or are we actually going to continue to get more about the Void Century? I would be very surprised if we got more than this, but I also said that last time, so we got 2 weeks to speculate, so let me know. Until next time.